you've got instructions here. And instructions, create and add a gradient using the gradient, create a square. And you got to do that first because the gradient tool is not a drawing tool, it's a coloring tool. So you've got to use the rectangle tool. Letter M is the quick key to create a rectangle, and then you'll use the gradient tool. Letter G is the gradient tool, and you can see the gradient panel by going to Window Gradient, or it's in the Properties panel as well. You can add or subtract colors in the gradient panel using the gradient tool, and you can adjust the gradient in the gradient tool using the gradient annotator. And so I'm going to start off by hitting the letter M. And so you see right now my fill is white. I do not want to fill, so I'll click this none or click the backslash, and I will just draw a square here. I'll hold shift while I draw it, so it'll be a perfect square. And there's one. And I'm going to need one for each of these. So I'm going to hold the Option or Alt key if I'm on a PC. I'm also holding the Shift key. When I do that, if I don't hold the Shift key, it won't be in alignment. If I hold the Shift key, it'll go straight across, and that's always going to duplicate. Now I'll just transform again, and that is Command D. I'll undo that. It is Edit, or rather Object Transform, and then transform again, Command D, and that'll make it. So now I have 3 gradients. Oh, I don't have 3 gradients. I have 3 just blank squares, and I'm going to copy those as well. I'll hold Alt or Option again and Shift. When I hold Alt or Option, it gives me this double-headed arrow cursor. Now I've got 6, and I'll transform again. Object, transform, transform again. And I never use these menus. I would just always use, interesting, this one's not in alignment down here. I'll move that up so it's in alignment. So now we've got 9 squares, and I can start doing what I need to do. So this one, I'll select it. I don't need the strokes, but I need the strokes right now to see it. And so first thing I'm going to do, I'll make sure I have fill selected. I'll hit the letter G for gradient. And in the properties panel, I can see the gradient panel right here, but I'm going to go ahead and pull it out into the desktop. I'm going to go to Window, and then it's alphabetical here, Gradient right here. And there's the gradient panel, and I'll pull it over here. I'm also going to get my swatches, and they're right here. I'll pull them out and I'll dock them in my gradient panel. So in the swatches, I've got a gradient right here, and I could do that, or I could click here, and here's the gradients. There's white to black, and that's what we want. Or there's an orange yellow. These are the default ones. These ones have transparency in them. I'm just going to go with this white to black one. Okay, and so actually that one's about all we need. It's black to white, but look, this color stopper right here is white and it's black there. So I need to reverse that. So in the gradient panel, if you look right here, there's a reverse, click, and now I'm done. And I don't really need that that line anymore around it. And there you go. But if you want to leave the line, it's fine too. Okay, this one, it's a different, this is a radial gradient, and I'll do the same thing. I'll start with the same gradient in the black and white gradient. And whoops, I made a mistake. Look right here. I was on the line because I was messing with that line. So I need to undo that. I've got a black stroke now. I need to make sure I'm on the stroke. And I can either not on the stroke. I can come over here and click on the fill, or if you hover over that, you'll see it will pop out and say X. So watch what happens when I hit X. It toggles between fill and stroke. And so I want to, on this exercise, and usually when I'm using gradient, you might want a gradient on a stroke, but usually we're talking a fill. And so I'll try that again. Now that I'm on the fill, I'll just click that black to white one. And I've got that same gradient. It's a linear gradient. It's in a straight line. It's horizontal. And I'll just pull a couple of different, this is called the gradient annotators. And you see as I pull it really short, it gradates from white to black there. I pull it really long. So in this case, this gradient is just a light gray to black, or a dark gray to black, because the whites clear out here. If I pull that in, you see what happens. So in this case, it doesn't really matter what's going on with that gradient right now, because I'm going to change it to, in the gradient panel, so that's linear gradients, I'm going to click the second one, that's a radial gradient. And so it's giving me a radial gradient now. And for the gradient, I'll move this one here to the center, and it's yellow and red, you see here. So how I change that is I will double click on that color stop, and I can just slide this yellow in the CMYK slider, or I've got this, so that's on the color palette here, or I can click swatches and I've got a yellow right there, and that's what I'll do. And then I can just click off. And then this one should be red, so I'll again double click and the swatches will be fine. I've got a red swatch right here, and done. And so this top little square is a midpoint, and this is called the gradient annotator here. And then in the gradient panel right here, you have the same thing. And so if I make a change, I can make this wider or shorter if I want. This is simple gradient, so it doesn't need to be wide, but if you have a lot of color stops, sometimes you need to expand that. I don't need to. If I make a change here, like if I change that to blue, it works there. Or if I double click on this one and I'll change it to, green, and you see it does the same thing, but I want red. So I want red. The other thing I want to show you is in the middle, there's this little triangle at the top, and you also see that triangle here in the gradient annotator. I'll move it here. What happens is as I move that, you see it will make the midpoint farther one way than another. For this one, we just want the midpoint in the middle. You don't need to move that. So that's a radial gradient. So we have a linear gradient, we have a radial gradient. I'm done with that one. I'll click on the stroke here. And I'm going to do that row last. That's freeform gradient. So I'm going to come down here, another linear gradient. I'll select this one, and I'm going to go back to the gradients. I'll just pick a black to white gradient, and it says a diagonal gradient is what I need. So if you look, it's a diagonal left to right. So I filled that with just the gray. And how I do a diagonal, I've got a couple ways. I can just pull it on a diagonal, and that's 100% of the time what I would do. But you can also, in the gradient panel here, and this would be pretty easy, a diagonal, we'll want like a 45-degree angle. So I'll tell that to be a 45-degree angle, or I could tell it to be a minus 45-degree angle. It'll go the other way. In this instance, just a 45-degree angle is fine. And again, I could just pull that one way or the other. If I pull that gradient and hold shift, it's going to make it on a 45-degree angle. And so ends up with the same thing as I would get if I told it to be a 45-degree angle. It reversed it. Okay, so on this one, I want it light green. I'll do it on the gradient annotator here, and I'm going to make the annotator in the panel. I'm going to do this first one here. And so it says light green where it's white. And so I'll double click this color swatch, and I'm just going to use these swatches here. I've got a light green right here. That's good. And then what's the next thing? It says dark green at the top. So I'll double click that, and I'll find a dark green. And here's a nice dark green. And then it's saying green in the middle. And so I need a new color stop. So there's a couple of ways to get an extra color stop. I could hold shift, I'm not shift, but alt or option while I grab a swatch and pull, and it will duplicate a swatch. That's that same green. So from here to here, there's no change. If I were to move this green swatch over here, you see while holding alt or option, it duplicates. So I've got light green, green, light green. If I don't want a swatch, I could click the trash can, see what happens. It'll delete whatever swatch I had selected, or I put that back. I can just pull down and it will get rid of the swatch. Okay, the other thing, I'm pulling down on that one. So I'm back to where I was, light green, dark green swatch. I can also, I'll just click right below the panel, and it's giving me a new swatch. And the color of swatch it will pick will be wherever you click. I'll throw that one away. I'll click over here. You see it makes that light green. So whatever's above it, it will be the color that is. And so essentially by doing that, I'm not really changing the gradient at all. I'm just adding another color style. But in this instance, I want a different green. So I'll double click up here. Doesn't matter again if I click in the gradient panel or on the annotator here. These are both the gradient slider or the gradient annotator, but I'll click here and I'll just pick a regular green right here, like this middle one. It changed a little bit. Maybe I'll do this one. Yeah, I think I like that one better. So it had a little bit of variance. So there you go, light green, green, dark green. Okay, I'm going to hold the Command key, Control key if I'm on a PC, and you see what happens to my cursor. I'm in the gradient tool right now. You can see that. I hold the Command key, Control key. I'll click on this one. So now I'm in this one here. This one's selected. And you see what we want on this one. We want a radial gradient. And so and this one's a yellow, white, and purple gradient. I've got 3 colors here, so I could eye drop on this one. I just hit the letter I and eye drop. So this is the same exact gradient. You'll notice that the gradient, when I hit G for the gradient annotator, where this one is on an angle, when we eye drop a gradient, it's always going to do a if it's a diagonal gradient, it will always do straight across horizontal. Okay, this is going to be a radial gradient, and I could have started with a gray one. I could have started with any color gradient, but that one had 3 color stops already, so it was easy. So this one, we're going to do white in the middle, yellow on the left, and purple on the white. And then you'll see right here, it says clamped. And you can see on the little drawing here, I have pulled the midpoints closer to the white. So I'll start right here on this middle one, this green. And again, it doesn't matter if I double click here or if I double click here. It's just whatever is more convenient. I've got a white right there, and there's that white. And then I've got, um, oh, um, I've got a yellow here. I'll just pick this yellow. And I've got a, what was this one? A purple. I'll double click. And here's a nice purple right here. Okay. And so then we're clamping it, it says. So I'm going to move this white closer. And you see down here. So here's that midpoint, and it's going to initially always be right in the dead center between these 2 swatches. Wherever you put a new swatch, you see right here, here's a new midpoint, and it's always right in between. I'll throw that one away. And so we're clamping or we're choking the gradient. So I'm going to pull the midpoint down here. It will only let you get so close to it, and then it will stop. And I'll do the same thing here. I'll pull, and that's about how close it'll let me get. And there we go. It's a diagonal and oval, it says. And so if you look at the example, we want to squish it a little bit. See that? So we got the yellow, we got the white, we got the purple. And so how do I do that? I've got to have the gradient tool. And so here's that annotator, but I'll zoom up so you can see this one, maybe not that much. But when I hover over the annotator here, and I can move that annotator around wherever I want. This is kind of a fun thing about gradients. I could make it like the sun shining in the top or whatever, but I want it in the center. But when I hover over that, I've got some other tools here. Look at this one. What does it do? That's the one we want. What does this one do? Well, I'm going to pull that, and you see it stays. I don't have to hold any modifier key. It's staying perfectly round. I could make it a very small gradient or very large gradient. And I'll just leave it where it was. That's not the one I want. What does this one do here? I grab that. Again, it does the same thing on the sides. So that's making it bigger or smaller. This top one, that's the one we want. And so we want to make it a diagonal. And so I can make that an ellipse rather than an oval. So I did that. And so that I think that was about what the ellipse looked like that I wanted. Not sure. Then I need to rotate. And when I hover not on the actual piece, but just off to the side from that modifier, I get this circle turn thing. And when I turn that, you see I can rotate that. And if and so it's a diagonal. In this case, usually the shift key will snap things to points, but to 45s. It doesn't work on this one, but I'm just aiming towards that corner. And I think that's about what that one's supposed to look like. It looked like it was a little bigger. I'll make it a little bigger. So again, gradient tool, and I'll grab it and make it a little bigger. So there we go. There's that one. And now to our next one. Our next one's going to be a linear gradient. And I'll just hit G for gradient. And I'll go ahead. I'm going to go back in and just pick my white to black gradient. And you see it's doing a horizontal gradient. As I put color stops in, it'll make vertical gradient lines, but I want a gradient that goes horizontal. I have two choices. I could pull a new gradient like this, and that's usually what I would do. Or I can come here to the angle and I can just tell it to be a 90-degree. And that works just as fine as well. But for me, it's just a little quicker to do that with just pulling the new gradient. But I just showed you both ways to do it. And then here it's saying use the swatches panel. We're going to go red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, red. So we're almost getting the Roy G. Biv, but red, orange, yellow, green, blue, we skipped indigo, violet, and we added red again. So we're going to do that. I'll do the top part up to green on this annotator. I'll double click. And so we're using the swatch. And so here's red right here. So all of these ones here should work pretty good for me. So I click red, and then I'll click again off of it to get rid of that. I need to add a new swatch. How do I add a new swatch? I just hover. And so when I hover right below that, you see I get a little plus, and that means, so I'm aligning where that red is approximately. I get that little plus, it's going to click. And the color it gave me, once again, if I click down here, it's going to give me whatever color is next to it. Just threw that off to the edge. So I click here, it's not giving me any new, the gradient doesn't appear to change, but I have a new color stop I can manipulate. I'll double click that, and I'll come, that one's supposed to be orange, and look right here, I've got an orange, and I can hit escape to get out, or I can just click off of it. I'm still in the gradient tool. Here's yellow. I'll click underneath it. I'll double click. I've got a yellow right here. It's going right in order. And I'll just click back on that color stop. And then last one I'll do here, I've got green. I'll click beneath. I'll double click on the stopper, and here's a green. Okay, and I'll click on that stopper. Now this part, I'm going to do in the down here. It's probably easier on this one because I can see the colors. I'm going to start right here with this one where I've got a white stopper. It's going to be red. So I'm going to double click right there, and there's my red. There we go. And then I've got to have two stoppers between here. They're going to be about that same distance. And so I'm just going to click one, and I'm going to click two. And they look pretty even. I can nudge them around. The color's not doing much yet. This one here should be violet. It says V for violet. I'll double click this stopper down here in the gradient panel. There's that violet color, or purple. And then this one is blue. And so we're just doing this bottom row in the standard swatches, and blue, and then click off of it. And there we go. It's a linear gradient, and it's a vertical annotator, and that's what we get. And as you look, doesn't show up as much in the grayscale, but that's what we're doing essentially. Okay, on to our last regular gradient. And this one, we're going to clamp the gradients or choke the gradient. And so this kind of looks like an eyeball. And so it's a white to black. Uh, uh, and it says down here, if you think B is blue or G is green, GR is green, well, look down here. It's black, white, gray. And so for this one, just uh, click on that. Well, it's going to be that color. Don't want that, but I'll click down here and I'll tell it to be white, black, or I could click on my swatches and I have that gradient here. So I just clicked on that. It's going to be a radial gradient. I need to go to the gradient panel here. I'll click this middle one, radial, and then you see what it's doing. It only goes uh, one side here. And you see, again, it's looking like this eye sort of thing. So we're going to get white and then black and then gray, black in the middle. Okay, so gradient. And so black, and then we got black here. So I'll just click either of these blacks will work fine. There's black. Well, now it's just black to black. That's not really doing anything, but still a gradient. It's just black to black, not doing anything. So I need another swatch. I'll click right here. I'll add another swatch, and that's supposed to be white. There we go, white. And then I've got a gray swatch right here. And I'll just come down here and pick a mid-value gray on this grayscale here. And there we go. So I've got the swatches, but I don't have these midpoints clamped. And so we're clamping to the white here. As I do that, you see it's going to make, so I've got a really soft gradient as I move that there. When I get close to the white, it makes a fairly hard gradient. But it's still, as you know, I told you before, you can only pull that slider so close. If you want a totally hard line, you can duplicate. That's not what this is asking for, but you can hold Alt or Option and copy this black one. I could pull it right on top of that, and I've got a hard line. It looks like a vector shape. It's not. I've just drawn another gradient stop there. But on this assignment, we're just clamping it. We're just choking it down. So that's what we're doing. So the black is choked down to the white. It gives us a fairly hard edge for the black. And then we're going to do the same thing here. We've got white, and we're going to clamp it down to the gray. So I'm going to pull the midpoint here on the white, clamp it down as far as it lets me go on the gray. You see that? And they're doing the same thing here. We're going to actually, I got a black stop here I don't need. It's only black and white, and black, white, gray, black. Okay, it is supposed to be black in the edge. Or was it? Anyway, so this is saying, oh, this is introducing, I should read the instructions. The black, I'll get to that one. So the gray, I'm gonna clamp the white to the gray. Done that. I'm gonna clamp the black to the midpoint to the gray, and there you go. But we've got all this black here, and if you remember, I'll hold Command for a second, pull it out. We don't have any black showing there. So what's going on? So we're introducing now opacity. So you see the black is at 0 opacity. So I can either click right here on the gradient, and it'll bring up this panel, the swatch panel, or I can click here, same thing. But you see right here, the top says opacity. When I tell that to, and I can set it at whatever opacity I want. If I set it to 0% opacity, like it tells me, there you go. I've got black at 100% opacity, 100%. I've got white at 100% opacity, and it's clamped or choked down to that. And I've got the gray, and I've choked both the black at 0% opacity and the white at 0, and the white clamped to the gray, the black clamped to the gray. And you could ask, well, why do black here instead of just 0% opacity on white? Well, it would essentially look very similar, and I'll do that to show you. I'll click that, I'll tell it to be white, and then I'll tell it to be 100% opacity. Looks the same, but what the difference is maybe we want to have maybe we're making an eye, and we want to have it's an eye for a fish, and we got like goldfish pink orange scales here. Well, that's going to be white in that box. So if I told it to be black, and then I told that opacity to be 0 on that color stop, I got black, opacity 0, then it will allow for other colors to be behind that. And just to show you what I mean, I'm going to copy this shape, and then I'm going to, so I hit Command C, Control C, copy, and I'll paste in back, or I'll go to Edit, Paste in back. And it doesn't look like too much, but it got darker. And now I'll just tell that swatch to fill with, I'll go to my swatches, and I was doing a goldfish in my little analogy. There's my goldfish color. And so for that swatch, I just filled it with a flat orange. And so I didn't really need that orange. I just did that to show you what we were doing. Okay, so that's a little showing you the linear gradients and radial gradients. We've done some clamping or choking the gradients, did that as well on this one, made radial gradients will always start perfectly circular, but we can manipulate them with the annotator. And so the next row here, we haven't really done much with on this class yet, but we'll do that now. So we're going to do the freeform gradient. And so I'll click that, and here's the instructions. Our top left will be 100% cyan. And so I've got to click on gradient. Right now I have no fill. It's just a black stroke with no fill. I'll click on the freeform gradient panel, and it gave me a red, because red, I think, was the last color I had selected. Actually, white and gray was. And so, but this is saying top left should be 100% cyan. So in this case, I've got 100% cyan right here. This is, or, yeah, that should be 100% cyan. I can also, if I had the color panel, I'll nest it here as well. And in color, if I did CMYK and show options, I could say, well, let's have that top one be 100% cyan. Right now, I'm not, by clicking that, it's not a freeform gradient anymore. It's just a color swatch. But I'll go back to gradient, and I'll click that, and I'll tell this to be cyan. And so, and I can click down here, or I can go 0, 100, 0, 0, and there I got 100% cyan. Okay, this one's 100% magenta. And so I'll click here, and I'm gonna hold shift while I grabbed all those. See, it moves them all in unison. And so that was a lot easier. I've got this one selected. You can see that's 100% magenta. I can just pull that, or I could have typed 100% magenta. Then I'm going to click this one. It's 100% yellow. I'll just grab one of them, hold shift, move them all down, and I could type 100. So, and then hit return. I've got 100 yellow there. And lastly, I've got K, which stands for black. Actually, for key, it's a printer term, but we say black. Okay, so that one's done. And so with the freeform gradient, you actually apply, you don't have to click on a pre-existing gradient, you apply the colors in there. And so freeform gradients have two modes, and I'm only showing you one on this exercise. But when I go back to gradient, here's freeform gradient. You see you have points, and that's where it starts, and you have lines. And so, and I'll make that a little bigger. Pull my panel up here. I'll just real quick show you lines as well. And that's not what you're doing here, but just to do a real quick demo on it. So this one we're doing we're doing just the color wheel with primary and secondary colors here. It's basically what we're doing. So we got red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. So that's essentially like a freeform swatch that would be the color wheel. And so I've got red here. So there's red. And if I wanted to do lines, and so I could like click another one right here, I'm adding a point. Or if I told it, I've got that one clicked. If I switched over here to lines, then when I click a new one, click, click, see, I'm making lines. But I don't want to do that on this one. That's not what this one is. So I can delete those points here, and I'll do that. Okay, so now I'm back to points, and I've got, well, I'm still doing lines. I can click points. I just showed you what lines could do. I'll show you lines more in the future. So that one's red. I've already got a stopper here that's yellow. So I'll double click it, and I'll just pull yellow all the way to 100. And then over here is orange. Well, I need an orange stop. And so I'll double click that, and I'll just click on an orange swatch. And then here's green right here. I'll double click that. I'll click a green swatch. And then I've got a blue right here. So I'll just click, it added an extra spot, and then I'll click a blue. And then lastly is violet. I'll move this one up here, double click, and I'll pick purple. And so there's the, kind of a color wheel. Red and yellow make orange, and yellow and blue make green, and blue and red make violet. And so we got primary and secondary colors. Primary colors, blue, yellow, red. So those kind of make a triangle. You see that here to here to here. Secondary colors, orange, violet, green, makes another triangle. Okay, last one here. This is a freeform gradient with RGB color. I'll click here again. I'm going to go down to the gradient tool. I will click freeform gradient. And so the top here, we only need 3 stops, and I've got 4 to start. And so I don't need this one. What do? I select it, and I'll just hit the delete key, and it's gone. Okay, so red, I'm going to go to color here, and I'll go to, on this hamburger menu, RGB color mode. Okay, so now you see I have red, green, blue sliders. And so your monitor is going to be RGB, your television is going to be RGB, red, green, blue. It's a very large color spectrum. In printing, though, on offset printing, we always are in the CMYK, cyan, magenta, yellow, black mode. But if we're digital, we're always RGB. And so I've got red, and so it's giving me a formula here, 100% red, 0, blue, and green. Okay, so here's red, and I'll type 100, tab 0, and hit return. And it's kind of a darker red. I'll click here for green. What does it tell me it wants? It's saying bottom left, 100% green, 0 blue, 0 red. Okay, I'll click that, and I'll click the color here. And so 0, 0, whoops, wrong one. That was green. 100% green. And so really notice when it says 100%, it's kind of this dark green. But in RGB, we use 255. So that's a more the green you were thinking. Just like, see that, I told that one to be 100 red. And look, it doesn't really look like 100 red. It was much darker. So let's try that again. I'll pull that all the way to 255. And maybe those numbers should say that. But I'll just pull them like that. That's going to be a more red, more green. You just pull it to 255. So when we say 100%, when we're talking RGB, we really mean 255. I know it might be confusing, but that's just the way RGB color works. Lastly, blue, I'll click that. And I don't want to double click. That's going to pull up this color stopper. If I just click on any of these, it'll give me the RGBs that I need. So I click that, and this is blue 100% or 255. These other two I'll pull down to 0. And there we go. Click off. We have RGB. And there we are. Last thing on this assignment I would want to do, since I have your name here, it's a different version of Illustrator. It was just telling me. And I'll type my name is Alan Dennis. You'll notice that it's aligned right type. If I were to get the direct selection tool, you would see there's an anchor point right here. That's called point type. All right, so that's that assignment. That's the basics of linear, radial, and freeform gradients. All right, so